The L.A. sun was a hostile white eye, bleaching the dust on Jack McGrath's office window. It was a $3 a day heat, the kind that cooked the bourbon fumes in his lungs until they tasted like varnish. Jack stared at the bottle, a half-empty promise of a quiet afternoon. Then he looked at the box. It was an old evidence box, cardboard softened by decades, filled with his grandfather's ghosts. The case, the one that had eaten him alive, driven him from the LAPD to a bottle, and finally to a self-inflicted gunshot in a dim, silent garage. The Black Dahlia. Jack hated the name. He hated the morbid glamour, the cottage industry of true crime ghouls, the way the city had turned a butchered woman into a Hollywood brand. His grandfather, Detective Liam McGrath, had been the lead. He'd looked into that abyss, and the abyss had hollowed him out, leaving only an obsessive husk. Jack had inherited the obsession, but his was simpler. He was obsessed with forgetting it. He was ex-LAPD himself, disgraced. A procedural error that let a studio executive's son walk on a manslaughter charge. Now he was a private investigator, which was a polite term for a man who found lost dogs and took compromising photos for divorce lawyers. The bottle was his only reliable partner. His phone buzzed, a cracked screen relic. The name on it made his stomach clench. Frank Jenkins, his old partner. "She's gone, Jack!" Frank's voice was gravel, wrecked. "Sarah, she's been gone 3 days. Kids vanish, Frank. She's 22, probably in Vegas, or not Sarah." The line went quiet, heavy with accusation. Frank hadn't forgiven Jack for the procedural error that had cost them both their shields. Sarah was his daughter, a bright, aspiring actress who had just landed her first small role. "I'll ask around," Jack mumbled, already tasting the next drink. "You owe me, Jack. You owe me." The call ended. Jack sighed, rubbing the grit from his eyes. He'd make a few calls, but he knew how this story went. An hour later, a courier dropped a package at his door. No return address. Inside, nestled in black foam, was a sleek, disposable burner phone. He powered it on. The screen lit up, displaying a single locked file. It opened without a password. It wasn't a video. It was a photograph. The bourbon turned to acid in his throat. His heart hammered against his ribs, a cold, frantic drumbeat. It was Sarah Jenkins. She was alive, but her eyes were glassy, drugged. She was posed, her body arched in a grotesque, deliberate way. Her skin was pale, her hair fanned out. And on her lips, placed with artistic precision, was a single, perfect black dahlia. It wasn't just a copycat pose. It was an exact recreation of one of his grandfather's private crime scene photos. A photo that had never been released to the public. A photo Jack was staring at right now, pinned to the corkboard in the open evidence box. The past wasn't dead. It wasn't even past. It was here, in his shitty office, and it had a new name. The booze fog burned away, replaced by the jagged, scraping clarity of adrenaline. This wasn't about his grandfather's ghost. This was about Frank's daughter. Jack's old instincts rebooted. He went to Sarah's apartment in Silver Lake. The place was clean, too clean. Frank had already been there, his grief and rage radiating from the scuffed-up door jamb. Jack looked past the obvious. He found what Frank had missed, a small, embossed black card tucked inside a book on surrealist art. El Ojo Muerto, The Dead Eye. An address for an avant-garde gallery downtown. He knew he couldn't walk in flashing a dead badge. He needed access. He needed a rat. He found Milo Fixer Vance holding court at a rooftop bar in WeHo, a place so expensive the air smelled like money and citrus. Milo was a creature of the LA. Tonight, a tabloid journalist who traded in secrets and swam in the city's sewage. He wore a linen suit, his face a mask of predatory charm. Jack McGrath! A ghost from the precinct. Milo beamed, sliding a ridiculously small drink across the bar. To what do I owe the pleasure? Finally ready to sell me your granddaddy's Dahlia files? I need info, Jack said, ignoring the drink. A place, El Ojo Muerto. Milo's smile tightened. Ooh, stepping up in the world, Jack. That's not your usual lost poodle territory. That's the deep end. The weird end. What is it? It's an art club. More of a cult. For the very rich, the very powerful, and the very bored. Milo leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. They're into transgressive art. The real bleeding-edge stuff. Think Man Ray, but with more, blood. I need a name. Someone who goes there. And what's in it for Milo? An exclusive. Something big is happening, Milo. Something that smells like old Hollywood. Like 1,947. Milo's eyes lit up. The shock scented the chum. 1,947? You're not just whistling, Dixie, are you, Jack? You give me that. You get the keys to the kingdom. He scribbled a name on a napkin. Dr. Eris Thorne. A plastic surgeon with hands of gold and the morals of a rattlesnake. He's their high priest. He's having a private viewing tonight at his gallery. Go nuts. But remember, Jack, I get the byline. The gallery was less a room and more a sterile wound. It was all white walls, polished concrete, and brutalist angles. The art was horrific, not in a cheap jump scare way, but in a cold, precise, inhuman way. There were medical diagrams overlaid on classic portraits. Sculptures of stainless steel and silicone that looked unsettlingly like flayed limbs. A series of photographs dominated one wall. Rhapsody in B-flat, minor. It showed mannequins, or parts of mannequins, arranged in poses of extreme trauma, but with the sterile beauty of a surgical theater. One photo, a close-up on a cracked porcelain face, had a single red line painted across the smile. A perfect bisecting cut. The Glasgow smile. Jack felt the bile rise. This wasn't art. This was a rehearsal. Mr. McGrath. An unexpected displeasure. Jack turned. Dr. Eris Thorne was immaculate. A razor-thin man in a black silk suit. His face was a smooth, passionless mask, likely his own best work. He was flanked by two men who weren't art lovers. They were slabs of muscle in tight-fitting suits. You're Leah McGrath's grandson, aren't you? Thorne's voice was calm, melodic. Such a tragic figure. He believed one man, one monster, was responsible. He was wrong. Where is she, Thorne? Jack's hand twitched toward the .38 snub nose under his jacket. He was looking for a monster, Thorne continued, ignoring the question, his eyes fixed on the photographs. But it was never a monster. It was art. It was a statement. My grandfather was a contemporary of Man Ray, He believed the ultimate canvas was the human form. The ultimate expression was its deconstruction. Elizabeth Short was his masterpiece. The first masterpiece of the Surrealist Club. A cold dread, colder than any whiskey, flooded Jack's veins. This wasn't a copycat. This was a dynasty. And now, Thorne smiled. A thin, dry, reptile smiled. The new generation is paying homage. A modern interpretation. A recreation. Sarah Jenkins, a beautiful canvas. We are preparing her for the final installation. Thorne nodded to his security. Mr. McGrath was just leaving. He seems unwell. Please, escort him out. Roughly. We cannot have him disturbing the patrons. The two slabs moved. Jack wasn't a cop anymore. He didn't have to play by the rules. He grabbed a small, heavy steel sculpture, 2 rods piercing a block of marble, and swung it. He broke the first man's nose with the marble. He drove the steel rods into the second man's ribs. It was fast, ugly, and desperate. He smashed his way out of the gallery, alarms blaring, the sound of Thorne's detached, slightly annoyed voice echoing behind him. "Do try not to damage the exhibits." He stumbled into his car, gasping, his knuckles split and bleeding. He was out of his depth. He was fighting a conspiracy with a trust fund and a medical degree. His burner phone buzzed. A new message. It was from Milo. "They moved her. I know where. Meet me. The old Formosa. 1 hour. Come alone. We're gonna blow this wide open, Jackie boy." It was a lifeline. Or a noose. At this point, Jack didn't care which. The Formosa Cafe was dark, red, and thick with the smell of stale beer and history. Milo was in a back booth, nursing a whiskey, his face pale and slick with sweat. "Jesus, Jack, you look like hammered shit," Milo said, his usual bravado gone, replaced by a twitchy, nervous energy. "Thorne, the Surrealist Club. It's them." They admitted it. The original Dahlia. It was them. Their grandfathers. I know, Milo said, running a hand through his hair. "It's big, Jack. It's the story. It's bigger than God. They have Sarah. They're going to kill her, Milo. Just like Elizabeth Short. Where are they?" "I got it." Milo slid a piece of paper across the table. "An address in the Hollywood Hills. It's a private residence. Belongs to a shell corp. This is it, Jack. This is the main event." "How do you know this?" Jack's eyes narrowed. The adrenaline was fading, and the cop's suspicion was returning. Milo was too nervous, too eager. "I have my sources, Jack. I'm the fixer, remember?" Milo tried a grin. It looked like a grimace. "Look, we gotta go now. They're probably starting." "What aren't you telling me, Milo?" "Nothing. We're partners, Jack. You're the muscle, I'm the mouth. We'll be legends. We'll be the ones who finally solved the Black Dahlia." Jack looked at the address. He looked at Milo. He didn't have a choice. "Let's go." They drove up into the hills, the lights of L.A., sprawling below them like a carpet of shattered diamonds. The address wasn't a house. It was a fortress. A stark white, modern monstrosity of glass and steel, cantilevered over the canyon. It looked like a high-end surgical clinic. It was silent, sterile, and lit from within by a cold, blue-white light. "How do we get in?" Jack said, checking the 6 rounds in his .38. "The back?" Milo said too quickly. "Service entrance." I scoped it out. He led Jack down a stone path, past a dead, minimalist garden. The service door was unlocked. "This is too easy, Milo," Jack whispered, his gun in his hand. "They're artists, Jack, not soldiers. They're arrogant. Come on." They were inside. The interior was vast, cold, and white. It felt like the gallery, but bigger, more permanent. The only sound was the low hum of an industrial-grade air conditioning system. "This way," Milo whispered, leading him down a long, white corridor. "The main gallery. It's like an operating theater." They reached a set of brushed steel double doors. Milo put his hand on one. "Jack," he whispered, his voice trembling. "What they're doing, it's art. You have to understand. It's beautiful. The precision, the transgression." Jack went cold. "What did you say?" They offered me a ticket, Jack. An exclusive. Not just to report on it, to document it. To be the official chronicler of the new masterpiece." Jack grabbed him, slamming him against the white wall. The 38 was under Milo's chin. You sold her out. It's not selling her out, Jack. It's immortalizing her. She'll be more famous than Short. And they said I was part of the performance. But they needed one more piece. The final act. What final piece? Jack growled. Milo was crying now, fat, terrified tears. The avenging detective, the flawed hero, the ghost of your grandfather, here to fail one last time. It's performance art, Jack. They're filming everything. The steel doors behind them slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Dr. Aris Thorne stood there, not in a suit, but in pristine white surgical scrubs. Flanking him were 4 other figures, dressed identically. But their faces, they wore masks. Not surgical masks. They were hard, white porcelain, utterly smooth, with no features save for stylized, avant-garde slashes for eyes, and a single small hole for a mouth. They looked like something from a nightmare by Dali. Mr. McGrath, Thorne's voice, slightly muffled, came from behind one of the masks. And Mr. Vance, you've brought our final performer. How wonderful. Please, come in. The installation is about to begin. The room was circular, white, and lit from above by a blindingly bright surgical lamp. It was a gallery and an operating room fused into one. In the center, on a table of polished stainless steel, was Sarah Jenkins. She was awake. Her eyes, wide with terror, darted to Jack. She was bound to the table by thick leather straps. She tried to scream, but her mouth was taped. The 5 masked figures of the Surrealist Club, a surgeon, a famous director, a tech billionaire, a politician's wife, moved with silent, practiced grace. A steel tray of instruments lay nearby. Scalpels, clamps, saws, all gleaming. Milo was on his knees, hyperventilating. Please, I did what you asked. I brought him. I get to watch. I get to film. Of course, Mr. Vance, Thorne said, picking up a scalpel. He tested the edge on his thumb. The chronicler must be present. You will be our witness. He turned his masked gaze to Jack. Your grandfather was a brute. He had no vision. He saw a murder. I saw the birth of a new aesthetic. He tried to solve it. I am here to perfect it. He moved toward Sarah. Jack didn't have a plan. He just had rage. He was the chaos. He was the dirt. He was the blunt instrument. He fired his. 38. The shot was deafening in the sterile room. It didn't hit Thorne, but it shattered a glass cabinet on the wall. The club members flinched. Their sterile, controlled world had just been violated by a dirty, street-level bang. This isn't art! Jack roared, firing again, this time at the tray of instruments. Scalpels and clamps scattered across the white floor. This is just rich assholes playing butcher. One of the masked figures, the tech billionaire, broad and strong, charged him. Jack pistol-whipped him across the porcelain mask. It didn't break, but the man staggered back, disoriented. The director pulled a syringe from her pocket and lunged. Jack kicked her in the stomach, sending her sprawling. This wasn't a fair fight. This was a brawl. Thorne, enraged, screamed, "He's ruining the aesthetic! Stop him! Preserve the canvas!" He lunged for Sarah with a scalpel. Jack threw himself forward, grabbing the heavy steel instrument tray and swinging it like a shield. The scalpel grazed his arm, drawing blood. Jack slammed the tray into Thorne's chest, sending him crashing into the politician's wife. They went down in a tangle of white scrubs. "Milo!" Jack yelled, grabbing the sobbing journalist by his linen jacket. "Want your exclusive?" He shoved Milo toward the two remaining figures, who hesitated, their medical precision useless against this sudden animal violence. Jack used the diversion, grabbing a heavy-duty steel stool. He smashed the main surgical light. The room plunged into semi-darkness, lit only by the ambient blue-white light from the hall. "Chaos, you bastards!" Jack yelled, grabbing the straps on Sarah's wrists. He fumbled with the buckles. Thorn, back on his feet, his mask cracked, revealing one furious blue eye, came at him again. "You will not defile this!" Jack didn't have time. He grabbed Milo and threw him bodily at Thorn. "Here's your front-page story, fixer!" Thorn, surprised, stumbled, and his scalpel, intended for Jack, plunged deep into Milo's shoulder. Milo screamed, a wet, terrible sound. That was all the time Jack needed. He ripped the last strap free and pulled Sarah off the table. She was weak, her legs buckling. "Run!" he hissed, pushing her toward the door. He turned to face the room. Thorn was clutching his cracked mask, staring at the bleeding, gurgling Milo. The other club members were scattered, their pristine white room now a mess of blood, broken glass, and upturned furniture. Their performance was ruined. Their art was spoiled. My masterpiece," Thorn whispered, horrified. "It's just a mess," Jack spat, backing out of the room. He slammed the steel doors shut, grabbed a gurney from the hallway, and jammed it under the handles. He half-carried, half-dragged Sarah down the white corridor. They could hear the muffled, furious pounding on the other side of the door. He kicked open the service door they'd entered. The night air was cold, a shocking contrast to the sterile hum of the house. He shoved Sarah into his battered car, threw it in reverse, and tore out of the driveway, the sound of a high-tech alarm finally beginning to wail from the glass fortress. They were halfway down the hills when the first red and blue lights appeared, screaming up the canyon. Thorn had called it in, but he wouldn't be calling it in as a kidnapping. He'd call it in as a home invasion, a burglary. By the time the cops got there, the operating room would be clean. Milo's body would be gone. It would be Jack's word against a billionaire surgeon. He drove past them, just another car on the road, and didn't stop until he reached the coast. He pulled over at a lookout point, the gray light of dawn breaking over the Pacific. The ocean was flat and calm. Sarah was wrapped in his trench coat in the passenger seat, shivering, the tape residue still on her face. They, she whispered. They kept talking about art. About lines. They were going to cut me. They didn't, Jack said, his voice raw. His arm was bleeding. His knuckles were broken. It's over. He got out of the car and walked to the edge. The sun was coming up, painting the L. A. Haze in shades of orange and pink. The same hostile sun, but it felt different now. He couldn't prove a thing. Not really. The Surrealist Club was too rich, too powerful. The 1947 case would remain a mystery. Milo was gone. Thorn would claim Jack was a drunk, obsessed lunatic who'd attacked him. He'd probably lose his PI license. He might even do time. But he didn't care. He reached into his pocket and took out his grandfather's tarnished silver flask. He looked at it for a long moment. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he threw it over the cliff. He watched it spin, catching the new light before it vanished into the surf below. He hadn't solved his grandfather's case. He hadn't brought justice to Elizabeth Short. He had just stopped the echo. He had prevented the rhyme. He got back in the car. Sarah was asleep, an exhausted, drugged sleep. He started the engine and drove her toward the sunrise, away from the shadows of Hollywood. He had finally paid his family's debt, not by solving the past, but by surviving it.